Number one on my list of August bass fishing baits is small crankbaits. And man, this can be a tough time of year where the bite gets a little tough. Those fish have been pressured. It's the dog days of August. It's hot. But man, these things can work. And I've got two shallow baits. I have a deep bait, one schooling one, and then my last one is my favorite way to hammer them in August. If you get the right conditions, you can really light them up. But let's start off with small crankbaits. And these things, most of them are shallow runners, and they're just tiny. By the time you get to August, the bluegill, the crappie, the shad, the minnows, everything is spawned in the spring. And the young of the year, the babies that were born in anywhere from March and April up to May and June, they're not up to full size yet. They're these tiny little bait fish, and bass are snacking up on them. It's kind of like you and I, a piece of popcorn is pretty small to us, but if you can eat a whole bowl of it, it fills you up, or at least tides you over. Same with the bass. So even you can catch great big fish on these tiny little crankbaits. And here's the other thing. Most people in summertime, in the heat of summer, they're fishing deep, more offshore. The shallow stuff is not getting hit that much. And so the fish up shallow are not getting as much pressure. They've not seen as many baits. And I don't care how hot it is, the resident fish that stay shallow year-round. So there's always going to be some fish, if you have laydowns, lily pads, boat docks, shade lines and stuff, anything they can get around, there's going to be some bass shallow. But the other thing is the lake's gotten hot, and even the deep water, it's kind of hot out there. And with all the young of the year being up shallow, a lot of it fish are starting to show. It's not like they wait till, it's September 1st or October 1st, I can go shallow now. I couldn't go up there before. Now, some are already starting. They've been out deep for a while and this kind of played out. A lot of fishing pressure, bait's kind of up here shallow. And some are already starting to move shallow, so you can get ahead of it. So the neat thing about fishing shallow in August, not a whole lot of people are doing it. Everybody's kind of fishing out deep. And we'll talk about one of those baits, but that bite's kind of slowed down. So that's why the small crankbaits work. And basically, it's a lot of your favorite crankbaits, but a lot of them have a mini version. And we're talking little ones. So this one right here is a shallow money badger 4. The normal size is like 3 or 4 times the size of this, like way bigger. This is a tiny little bait. I mean, it's about as long as 1 or 2 knuckles on your finger. I mean, it's tiny. This looks like a bait fish here. And then a couple other good examples. This is like a square bill, just a small version of a square bill crankbait. Those work well. This is the Fritz side. Like a Fritz side 5 is my favorite, probably all around crankbait, that flat side. This is a Fritz side junior. So a lot of crankbaits, they just make a smaller size. I mean, it's not very big. And then like even the deeper runners, medium runners, this is a dime 4. It has a bill on it. This thing will dive, 4 to 5 feet. So it gets down there. If you want a little bit deeper and like clear water, get kind of below the just the surface there. But it's just a small profile. So I'm not talking about how big the bill is, but the body shape itself. So this is maybe almost 2 inches long, and like this one's maybe 1.5 inches or even smaller. You just want small profile. And it's, again, you're matching the hatch. Where are you going to fish these? This isn't like summertime in May and June where you get out on that school, you find a hot spot and you just sit there and you just crank one after another and there's 40 fish in an area. This is basically get on a bank that has some wind on it, hopefully has some cover, laydowns, docks, whatever, you name it, and just start casting and casting. If you're in a boat on the trolling motor, turn up the trolling motor and just start making casts. Making a bunch of them, covering water, retrieving it, stop and go, and making erratic casts and everything, but you're just covering water. And there's not going to be a big group, but sooner or later, you're just going to randomly run into fish. And you kind of have to set your expectations on this. It's like I said, it's August, where maybe like a good day back in May and June was catching 15, 20, 25 fish in a day, maybe more. Now, a lot of times a good day might be 5 fish, 10 fish, something like that. So it's pretty much trying to pick up 1 fish an hour and just start covering water. And, it's not quite as good, but you still catch them and you catch some good ones. And so you can catch them in the middle of the day. Obviously, if it's a low light, if it's overcast, you get a rare rainy day in August, something like that can help. But if you just get on a windy bank and just start covering water, especially with this small little Finesse crankbait, everybody's throwing these, bigger crankbaits like that and throwing bladed jigs and flipping jigs and stuff. It's just smaller. So cover some water with these, and sooner or later you run into them and might run into a good one every once in a while. Now, colors of these, a couple of these are reds, and I just grabbed these out of the box quickly. I would not prefer the red ones. Those are more spring type ones. What you're seeing here, the shad, the basic shad colors. So I like the translucent, the see-through, the ghost ones, or the see-through ones. If the water's clear and it's brighter, if the water's kind of muddy, or if it's more overcast day and I wanted to help find it, then I'll go with white, so you can't see through it. It's more white on the side. But something that looks like a natural bait fish. All bass are going to eat minnows, and you can go with like bluegill looking ones. Sometimes that's good too, but basically to me, the more natural, the better. Bait number 2 is a fun one, and this is how you catch big ones, shallow, Buzzbaits and Plopper style baits. Now, in the summer like this, you would think fish aren't going to be up there and only first light and stuff. But we used to fish, whether it was kind of regional team tournaments, fishing back in the day, and then like FLW Tour and stuff, we used to have championships a lot of times. They were in August. They wanted to have them where the crowds were going to be big, and it's before the kids went back to school. So we do them in August in the heat of the summer, and I couldn't believe how well these work, and for big fish especially. Now, you typically want to find shade and you want to find cover. So behind boat docks is a great spot. Getting actually behind, so on the walkways, not on the deep end of a dock, but back behind the walkway coming out to the dock. Anywhere there's shallow cover with laydowns, or if there's shade line, you get in the morning, the shade's going to be on one shore, in the afternoon, it's going to be on the other side, but you just get on those shady banks and go. The more cover it has, the better. But the neat thing is, by August, a lot of lakes, you're not getting much rain. So the water level's starting to drop, and all those nice laydowns and lily pads that have all this water in them during the spring and the early part of summer, well, that water pulls out of them. So if the back of a cove had maybe 10 laydown trees in it back in June, now all of a sudden when the water gets lower, maybe only 1 or 2 of them have water left on them. So guess where those fish are going to be at? It's like if a place has 15 different restaurants, people are going to randomly spread out. If you stop at a gas station that's been the only gas station that only stopped for the last 50 miles on the interstate, and there's a Subway there, well, guess what? Everybody's eating at the Subway or getting chips at the gas station because that's your only choice. Same with the laydowns. If there's only 1 or 2 that's still have water on them, or rocky bank or shady bank, there's less cover. So you just randomly, if there's any piece of cover, and a lot of times you can't see it, there'll be a laydown or a limb or one big craggy rock in the under the water, or maybe there's just like one little hole right there or deep spot, whatever. Those fish can get just on these isolated little targets, and you can't call your shot a lot of times. But if you just start covering a bunch of water, like I was talking about with the crankbait, this crankbait, they're a little bit better for catching numbers and get a random big one. These ones, the topwaters, typically don't get as many bites on most days, like early or late, or if it's a rainy day or something, that you can get numbers. But a lot of times, you're not catching a lot of fish, but like in a tournament situation, you might only get 5 bites all day, but every one's going to be a good one. You can actually have a monster limit with these right in the heat of the summer. And again, certain lakes, a lot of people do these, but most places, guys aren't out fishing shallow like this, and they're doing it early and late. They're not doing it during the heat of the day. So you can literally do this all day long, just cover water, go, and run into them. Buzzbait's great. I like if it's sunnier, black one, the black blade and stuff. It's just not as much flash. It's more of a silhouette. They can't see it as well. So black's a great option on that, a black buzzbait, and you can whip it a mile. Some guys like the tow trailers, then you put an action trailer behind it or make it look more shady. You can play around with that. But I like something, typically a black one, and just launch this thing out there and just cover as much water as I can. And then the other one, any of these Plopper style baits, this is a screaming choppo. It has a metal part on here where it grinds like metal on metal. So you it's a combination between a Plopper and a buzzbait. So the great thing about these is you get the squeal out of them. Like this river here, you get that natural squeal out of it. Well, the screaming choppo, actually, it'll froth up the water, but it also has that high-pitched whine like you get on a buzzbait. So that's kind of a neat bait as well. A little bit easier to cast this. You can throw this into the wind and cover a ton of water with it. But basically, you're trying to make a commotion, and it's shallow water. And when you're going down the bank in August, like I said, the water's down. A lot of times you're throwing to areas this deep to this deep. If there's a laydown tree or something up there, I mean, that fish he's either going to get spooked by this bait or he's going to eat it. One of those that when it comes in there, he's not going to miss it. So if you cover enough water, some of them are going to react to it. That's a fun way to catch them shallow. Now, bait number 3, this is for the deep water fishermen, and it's worm fishing, either Texas rig or drop shot. And basically, I'll go with, some days they like the big 10-inch, like a power worm. Sometimes I want a drop shot with just a finesse worm, and you have to soak that in front of them. But, worm fishing, traditionally, we think of summer fishing is worm fishing. That's really good, but that's more the first half of summer. By the time you get to the end, the thermoclines set in, a lot of fish are suspended, they've been pressured, the groups, the schools are smaller. Like I said, a lot of fish are starting to suspend and roam, or they're moving up shallow. So you're not getting those big groups. And that's where I'm really looking for one of two things, either a brush pile, or if your lake has standing timber, some sort of cover like that. And the difference that I do here is normally you're throwing out and you're just dragging a worm along, you're lift dropping it, whatever. Same with the drop shot. A lot of these fish get up higher, and you can scope them too. If you're using LiveScope, you can see this, and the guys with jig head minnows and stuff can get these. But a lot of fish are going to suspend in the trees. And even if you go zipping by with like a jig head minnow or a fuzzy dice or whatever, some of those fish will come out, but a lot of them by August, they're over it. They're not coming out for that stuff. That's where yo-yoing a bait, whether it's a drop shot or a Texas rig, get it in the tree. And if here's the limb, you're bringing your bait, you're yo-yoing it up to the limb, and I'm going to pull it up to here and then let it down, and pull it up, let it down, doing like a yo-yo, bringing it up to that limb, back and forth, bringing it up and down, and then you're just going to leave it there and kind of shake it in place. So let it sit there and then let it back down and pull it back. You're not pulling it up and over the limb. You're just bringing it up to it and letting it sit and dangle and then up, and it's just letting it sit there. And you keep it in their face long enough that sooner or later, the reluctant one comes over there and kind of looks at it, and it looks at it from the right side and the left side and keeps looking at it. And every once in a while, one of them eats it. And, some days a little better, sometimes not as well, but just really slow fishing it. And that's kind of the key. If you can get around a brush pile or a tree, any sort of cover where you can yo-yo your bait and keep it in front of them for a long time, that to me in August is the best worm fishing. You catch some on the bottom and casting around, but really that yo-yo, that's the deal. And like I said, Texas rig, some guys like the big Texas rig. If you like throwing a bait caster more, a big worm works well. If you're more finesse guy and it's clear water and you want to downsize, you want to go to a drop shot, finesse worm's going to work there. I've had success doing both. And to me, it's like either one will work. It's whatever your preference is. It's just a matter of yo-yoing it and having the patience to leave it there a long time. Because if you just cast in there, maybe your first cast, you get an aggressive one, but usually it's having to yo-yo it through there for a long time, and it's that patience and leaving it in front of them is what makes them bite more than the worm itself. Now, the first 3, we're grinding for fish. We're really working for them. These next 2, this is more fun and what I prefer to do, and you can have some pretty fun days doing it. And the first one being a topwater, but it says drift walker, and it's a finesse topwater. Worm fishing, what do? When they're aggressive, you throw a great big 10-inch worm like I was showing you. When it's tough, you go to a Nico rig or a wacky rig. You use a trick worm, finesse worm, just a smaller, finessey worm. And same with topwaters. This is a walking bait, but it's just a smaller, thinner profile than a big walking bait. And it's called a Berkeley drift walker. There's other companies make finesse ones too. But a walking bait is like the Zara Spook style. They walk back and forth. But you want one that's just a smaller body. It's the finesse version of it. And not shorter, but I like one that's just skinnier. So it's a smaller profile. Just like finesse worms and stuff, they're still 7-inch long, but they're really thin in diameter. Well, same with the drift walker. It's just thinner than a great big walking bait. And just to show you what I mean, here's the difference here. Here's a walker, a J walker. Here's a drift walker here. You can just see just smaller profile. It's still the same length, but just skinnier and smaller. And that's what you're doing. And what I'm fishing these on is during the middle of the day when you get schooling fish. And yeah, you can go out and scope them with jig head minnows. And if you go back to my July baits of the month, go back to the prior one I did on this, then using a fluke style bait out there, the jerk shad works really well too for the ones below the surface. But in August, a lot of fish are coming up to the surface. They're up to the top. If it's sunny and slick, it's the hottest part of the day, and it's just there's no ripple out there, and it's kind of a beatdown to be out there fishing. But if they're schooling, this is kind of a fun way, and I don't catch my magnums. Most of these fish are 4 pounds and less, and to be honest, most of them are like 2.5 pounds and less. Catch a lot of 12 inchers, 14 inchers. But if you just want to get some action out there, have some fun during the middle of summer, find an area where they're schooling. It's typically where 2 creeks come together, a mouth of a big creek, If it's a sunny, slick day when you're just running down the lake, going from one spot to the next, you'll see them. All of a sudden, they start popping out there. And those are the type areas. And once they're in there, they kind of stay, they don't stay in the exact same spot. There'll be like a couple football field area where they just kind of roam around. If you have LiveScope, you can watch them underneath the water. You can see them chasing bait, and you can throw in front of them. You can lead them. It's like throwing to your buddy playing catch and their wide receiver. You can throw it out to where they're going and work it over them. They'll come up for it. Anywhere from like 8 to 10 feet, they'll rise up in clear water and get it. If you don't LiveScope, that's the way we did it for years. You just look for the boil, and when you see a fish boil on the surface, you basically want to be holding your rod, just looking around. When one comes up, you want to throw in there as quickly as you can, land it right in the boil and work it immediately. And those fish, if you get in there almost instantly, it's amazing how often you'll catch those ones. If you just keep casting around, you randomly catch some. The problem is when one comes out boiling, by the time you reel it in and then throw it over there, a lot of times too late. That's why a lot of guys would just sit there with their arms crossed and kind of looking around, head on a swivel, and then, oh, there he is, throw out there, land it on him, and you'll catch him right away. But just the other thing, too, is, again, it's more finessey. You're doing this when it's sunny and slick. That's why I like the Drift Walker, which is a Finesse Topwater. Just the fact that it's going to be a finessier walk. It's a smaller profile. Instead of like the Zara Spooks, all the big ones, they work plenty of times, but it's and they're throwing water everywhere and making a big commotion and just knocking and clacking and stuff. Whereas this is just going to be quieter and just a smaller swishing on the surface instead of a big tidal wave kicking it out there. So any of the finessier type walking topwaters work well in that schooling situation. Great way to get some numbers in the summertime. And color, you can see this, I show both these. This Phantom White, it's kind of whitish on the back, kind of clear through there. These ones are getting older. I've used them so long, they're starting to get yellow down the bottom. Normally out of the package, they come pretty clear, but that's what you want. Something pretty natural that you can kind of see through. They see a little white. It's the illusion of bait fish, but they don't get too good a look. You don't want some frog pattern or something real bright. Some guys like the chrome, which kind of reflects, gives a hot spot up there. That'll work too. I typically like the see-through ones. I want them to see it, but not very well. And then number 5, now this is my favorite way to catch numbers and size. Have really good days in August if your lake sets up right. And that's punching mats for bass in August. And in the summertime, you get water that the lake level draws down. So all of a sudden, these huge grass mats where they can roam all over, when it starts to get lower, like we're talking about, all of a sudden it makes a hard roof on there. And to you, it looks like it's just solid. No fish would live under it. The best way I've heard it explained is think like a forest where you walk through the woods. To you, it's wide open. You can walk through trails underneath there. It's really easy to get through underneath trees. For a bird flying above, if he looks at the top of the tree from above, it looks like, oh man, it's all thick. He can't see that underneath the top of the tree, underneath the crown, it's all open down underneath it where we walk, right? Same thing with the grass. So it mats out in the top, but then it gets dark underneath there, and there's actually openings and voids and holes down there. There's tunnels where the fish hang out. So I definitely punching in the summertime, those fish, and especially when there's, the water, a lot of it's kind of receded, so there's less grass now, and those matted areas, you'll typically find them that all of a sudden when you find an area where there's fish, there's going to be a number of them there. There's going to be a hot section. A lot of people don't like, one, they're not out there in the middle of summer. And then a lot of people don't like punching just because this is kind of more physical. You're going to take a heavy sinker, anywhere from an ounce up to 2.5 ounces. You're going to Texas rig it, peg it on there. It's going to take a big flipping stick. You might go an hour or two without bites. People just give up on it. And, it's just heavy. And every time it's hanging up in there and your hook's coming out and you're getting fouled some and it's hot. So you're already in a bad mood. And then it just makes it worse when you're not getting bit. Most people give up on it. And they're out there, though. If you keep pushing through it, sooner or later, you're going to catch them. And a couple keys on that. For starters, it's really frustrating. Depending on the baits, like beaver-style baits and stuff, or a thinner profile worm, your hook comes out, your hook percentage is good. The problem is you don't have enough meat there to keep your hook into the bait, and it's going to be coming out a lot. You're going to be snagging up, or you got to pull it out of the grass and re-rig your bait all the time. Or the hook point's pushing through the worm, and then it's snagging too. It's going to drive you crazy. So you want a plastic with a pretty good bite to it, pretty thick, meaty section to it where the hook actually goes in. So you don't want something real thin there. Otherwise, you're just going to create problems. This is a crud craw, any of the craw style baits, you can see them when you look at them. Anything with just a pretty thick section, you can see this is a stank bug. Any crawbaits, these are kind of the classic ones for punching, and they just hold a hook pretty well. You see it's narrow at the top, but where the hook goes through, that's a pretty thick piece of plastic right there. And then my favorite for big fish, this is a crash craw. You can see this is it's almost like a beaver style body, but it's thicker. It's specifically made for punching, and it has a couple action claws there that are gonna really flap when you go through, but it's real streamlined. So it's made for punching where it's gonna go through those cracks in the grass. You don't want something, it has these tiny little appendages here, but you don't want big arms or something they're gonna hang up. You want something really streamlined. One, it's gotta hold a hook. Two, it's gotta be streamlined to get through so you can just make as many punches as you want or need during the day to find those fish. So choosing the right plastic for punching is probably as key as the color and all the other stuff. You just have to be able to make enough pitches before you give up. But that big crash crawl, they make it to two sizes. This is one's decent for numbers and stuff. But if I'm going to go, I'll go to the craws if I'm trying to find them more, and if I'm trying to just catch numbers. If I want to catch big fish around good ones, this big 4-inch, what is it, a 4.25 they call it, bigger size. I like the giant one. If I'm going for bigger fish and there's some in the area, big profile, big fish on this one. The neat thing about punching is it works right during the heat of the day and the hottest part of the day when not much else is working usually. Those fish that are covered up in those dark canopies, they'll still bite. I know a lot of you will say, well, why don't you just frog it? I catch them on a frog. And yeah, they work, and especially earlier in the summer, that's a great way to catch them. The problem is everybody's doing it. It's easier. If you've caught a couple frogfish, punching's a great way to go through. You already know they're in the area and you catch them. Like I said, it's more effort. Most people don't want to do it, and it's just tough to punch those things in. It's heavy and it's going to work you. But man, you can catch some fish just because most people aren't willing to do it. So it's a great heat of the summer pattern that really most people know it works, but they're just not willing to do it. So I love doing that in August. If you're looking for more deep dives, check out my podcast with top pros, or check out my 5-hour in-depth course on how to get better at bass fishing.